In the midst of plenty, there is no scarcity. We're often told that in a country that can spend $21 trillion in war and militarization of our borders and communities since 9/11. But in the midst of plenty, he wants to cut the Build Back Better plan, which is a step, just a step toward what's really needed in this country, considering that there were 43% of the country was in poverty and low wealth prior to COVID ever hitting. He claims he is worried about entitlements. Interesting. He said, and he blamed that on the people of West Virginia. He doesn't want senior citizens, there are a large number of poor and low wealth in West Virginia. He doesn't want them to have Medicare that covers dental and vision. He treats corporations and the wealthy like they have an entitlement to make $2 trillion during the pandemic, while thousands in his own state lost jobs and life. And 8 million more people fell into poverty during the pandemic. He claims that he believes in work, but his plan, his way of cutting the Build Back Better plan, would cut 10,000 jobs from West Virginia. He claims he believes in work, but he doesn't want people to get free community college and the kind of training at those colleges that would empower them for work. And he claims he believes in work, but he refuses to pass the part of this plan that would actually increase living wages for home health care workers, the very people that come into our homes and care for us, and some of the people who work the most at-risk jobs during COVID. He claims he cares about the workers, but his cuts would actually hurt the essential workers, most of them poor and low wealth, during this pandemic. His positions are not moderate. We are begging the press to stop saying he's a moderate, because his form of moderate is the more I can cut, the more I can take away, that's moderate. That's not a moderate position. That's a politically mean position. It's an immoral position, and it's a politically incompetent position since over 40% of this state are poor and low wealth. He could be so much better. The truth is, he also proposed cuts in voting rights, and his cuts are politically mean and harmful and economically insane. Also wants to cut voting rights and refuses to protect voting rights from voter suppression, because he will not support ending the filibuster to pass the For the People Act, to pass the Voting Rights Amendment Act, or to pass many other bills. He didn't want to do it even to give workers $15 living wage. So in the end of the day, Mr. Manchin is blaming West Virginia for what he's doing, but West Virginians don't agree with what he's doing. He's blaming them and saying, I know my state, but he's actually hurting the very people that he claims is the reason he's doing it. And today you'll hear from West Virginians, and we invite you to be a part of this major rally on this coming Sunday at 4 o'clock in Charleston, where West Virginians, clergy, and impacted people will stand up and make clear that they are in full disagreement with what their senator purports he's doing on their behalf. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Barber. Now we will hear from Reverend Dr. Liz Theo-Harris, National Co-Chair of the Poor People's Campaign, A National Call for Moral Revival, and Director of the Kairos Center.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with everybody. Thank you to the press that has joined us and those that will watch this later. I also don't have a lot to say. I want us to get to the place where we hear from the people of West Virginia. But what we are saying here in the Poor People's Campaign, A National Call for Moral Revival, is that decisions are being made in D.C. right now. Decisions are being made in West Virginia with Senator Manchin, Arizona with Senator Sinema right now, about this Build Back Better plan, about voting rights, about climate change, about immigrant rights. And all of these decisions that are being made are going to fundamentally shift the trajectory of this nation. Either we're going to move towards a more just democracy that's for everyone, and that lifts from the bottom so that everybody can rise, or we see ourselves moving towards an increased oligarchy, where there's a greater and greater polarization of wealth and power into the hands of a very few and out of the hands of very many. But we in the Poor People's Campaign, poor people, low-wage workers, essential workers, people of faith, advocates with a moral conscience, we're tired of being pawns in a political game where we get hurt, where everything happens to the most marginalized, the poorest, while the greedy, while corrupt corporations, and while politicians that care, again, more about a very few elite and wealthy, and forget about the well-being of the people who have put them in office and who they are supposed to serve. Our message in this moment is that we cannot afford a compromise. We can't afford to have just a part of our democracy. And this question of how much does a bold Build Back Better agenda cost is the wrong question. And instead, the question that we're hearing out of West Virginia, that we're hearing out of Arizona, that we're hearing from poor and low-income communities all across the country is how much does it cost in the lives and the hurt to not build back better. As we heard Reverend Barber talking, Senator Manchin has been speaking a lot about the child tax credit, about entitlements, about means testing, and what he's done in those conversations is ignored the fierce urgency of now. He's committing a crime that prophets throughout our scriptures have denounced throughout the ages, where he puts on band-aids and he doesn't take the real issues of justice and righteousness and lifting from the bottom seriously. And so we will be in West Virginia this Sunday. We will be continuing to act throughout the week, and we will always, as we say in the Poor People's Campaign, be moving forward together and not one step back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Liz Theo Harris. We will now hear from Sarah Anderson, Global Economy Project Director for the Institute of Policy Studies and co-director for inequality.org. Sarah?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I work for the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C., and we've been providing some research support for the Poor People's Campaign for the past several years, and we're just so inspired to see the work that they're doing on the ground in places like West Virginia and elsewhere. I'm going to share my screen and just convey some numbers that I think will give you a better sense of the numbers of lives and livelihoods that are really hanging in the balance as lawmakers continue to negotiate on the Build Back Better plan. And so on the first screen here are some statistics looking at the potential for working families. Under the original Build Back Better plan proposal, it could create 17,290 new jobs. That's according to estimates by the Economic Policy Institute. And that's nearly 10,000 more than under Manchin's proposed much smaller $1.5 trillion plan. Most of the rest of these indicators I'm going to be sharing are based on the full funding of the Build Back Better plan and showing what kind of benefits there could be for people in West Virginia. The next one is paid family medical leave. The United States is the only developed country in the world that does not offer any guaranteed paid leave for all of its citizens. Finally, we would join the rest of the world with this, and an additional 88,000 West Virginians could take leave each year. Then there's the Earned Income Tax Credit, which was expanded under the American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed earlier this year. If we were to extend that, it would give increased economic security for 110,000 lower wage workers in the state. Moving on to children, there are so many things that are good for children in this package. I can't begin to go over them all. So I will just give a few examples. The child tax credits that were also expanded under the American Rescue Plan, if those were extended into the future after this year, it would benefit 346,000 West Virginian children and lift 23,000 of them above the official poverty rate. Universal pre-K would be extended to all 3-year-olds in West Virginia. We know 4-year-olds are already covered under a state plan. And childcare costs would be capped at no more than 7% of household income. And so for the typical West Virginia family, that could mean a savings of about $100 a week. Finally, for seniors and the disabled, this is a big category for West Virginia. The third nation in the country that has in terms of the percentage of your population above 65. The plan is to put a massive investment into long-term home and community-based care that would provide affordable services for 8,000 more West Virginia residents, allowing them the independence of staying at home and getting quality care and it would create 1,300 new good care jobs with benefits and allow 2,700 family caregivers to go back to work. Another point is the expansion of Medicare for seniors to cover dental, vision, and hearing aids, things that are so much needed. So this is just a sampling of some of the key provisions in the Build Back Better plan that would make a huge difference in people's lives. Just a word on how it would be paid for. Because of skyrocketing inequality, the wealthy and big corporations can easily afford to pay completely for this program, if not much more. And under the plan, people making under $400,000 a year wouldn't owe an extra dime. And it's just the richest 0.3% of West Virginia residents that would pay higher income taxes under this. So as Reverend Liz said, we are at a crossroads. We're at a fork in the road here in the United States. As lawmakers are negotiating right now, they are helping to decide which path are we going to go on. Are we going to pursue an equitable path that will be good for children and the aged and others to give them economic security and a dignified life? Or are we going to continue to let so much of our country's vast resources flow into the pockets of people at the top? And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We will now hear from Attorney David M. Friesen, pastor of the New First Baptist Church of Kanawha City in Charleston, West Virginia, and the recently retired founding vice president of the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for West Virginia University in Morgantown. Attorney Friesen?
Yes, good morning, actually. I am, my part here is just to stress how important I truly believe that it is that the Build Back Better program not be reduced. We have been pushing back on Senator Manchin, that many of us know personally here in West Virginia, as well as Senator Shelley Moore Capito. And I think it's important that at this point, for us to ask our senators to look at the humanity of what the Build Back Better program is all about. I mean, of all the states in the Union, West Virginia needs these provisions. Of all of the people, we're the second poorest state in the nation. And there is so much promise here in West Virginia, but the promise is rapidly being taken away from us. And you can see that in West Virginia because of the outmigration. West Virginia lost more of its population than any other state in the Union. And what the Build Back Better program will do, it will provide the structure, the resources for infrastructure, the resources to make West Virginia a place where even our most difficult and our poorest citizens can have a chance. I've been very upset with Senator Manchin over the past couple of years. He is in a place of great authority, and I think it would be very unfortunate for the end of his political career, where I truly believe that he has done much to help the citizens of West Virginia, that he would allow himself to be used by the corporate structure that will keep us from assisting the needs of our state. This also goes to the whole idea of the Voting Rights Act. I think it's so very important. One of the things that I have been most, that I think is most unfortunate is that in the name of bipartisanship, our Senator Manchin keeps diluting legislation. And in this matter, he's really trying to cut the amount of this expenditure in half. So rather than the 3.5 trillion that is over a 10-year period, he has now reduced it. And my hope is that the Biden administration will push back and not keep reducing this, because as was so eloquently said just a moment ago by Ms. Anderson, when you look at the difference in the 3.5 trillion and what it will do for West Virginia, and then you look at a reduced amount, it cuts everything down. And I would hate for his legacy to be a person who basically, like Wallace in the South, stood in the schoolhouse door to keep our seniors from having the type of resources, medical resources, to keep our children from having to be pulled out of poverty. And so we will be gathering on Sunday. First of all, we're gathering at 2 o'clock to push back against violence in the area. But then at 4 o'clock, we will come as the moral authority to say to Senator Joe Manchin, to say to Senator Shelley Moore Capito, now is the time that we invest in our people. Rather than investing in our richest few, that we invest in our people, to say to this world that in America, we stand for everyone, and we stand on the backs of those who have come before us. And we truly believe now is the time to build back better. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Attorney Freisen. We'll now be shifting to hear directly from the constituents of Senator Manchin who are impacted by his policies. First, we have Pam Garrison, Tri-Chair of the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign and a lifelong low-wage worker. Pam?
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. I'd like to address what some of the dog whistles that we keep hearing coming out of Washington, D.C., and we know what that is. Anytime we start hearing them words, we know there's something that's up for vote for the people, that there's something that's going to help the people up there. When we start hearing socialism, we know what that means. That means there's a bill or there's something that will help the people. We know when we hear entitlements, for us to ask to have a chance to work out of poverty and to have a future for our families, that's an entitlement. You know, we've been getting sicker and poorer since the 80s. We need a third reconstruction. Our country and our state has been neglected so bad, down to the point where we need a good investment. We don't need just to crumble. I take care of Ford. I'm the main caretaker for 4 disabled family members. I've got a nephew that's 27, this with spinal bifida, paralyzed from the waist down, that can't find an affordable, decent place to live, that he can use his wheelchairs and stuff in. This would help with housing. This would help with disability. This would help me taking care of my family members. And he wants to cut West Virginia out. They did the same thing with the minimum wage. Every time we get our hopes up, we get excited that we're going to have an opportunity or a chance, our senator rips it out of us. And we're tired of being the disappointed. We're tired of being let down. And we don't want half measures. Here in West Virginia and in this country, America deserves the full investment. And we're tired of the spin. So thank you for being here, and thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Next, we will have Jean Evans Moore, also a Tri-Chair of the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign. Jean? Jean, you're muted.
Good morning, everybody. My apologies. I'm known for forgetting to unmute myself. I am one of the tri-chairs, and I'm also a great grandmother. I'm concerned about a few things that this bill that Manchin claims is going to do all this stuff. Child tax credit. This has made it a lot easier for the parents to breathe and just figure out how they can manage. That should not be pulled away from them. It should be encouraged. It's necessary. Childcare is necessary and expensive, and many other items that we all need today. As we know, prices are starting to go up. They are going up. West Virginia has, 23,000 families that will greatly benefit from this. And it certainly shouldn't be pulled back, just as preschool for 3-year-olds should be available. Children benefit from the social and educational interaction, and so does the family. They are the future of this state. Clean water and air are needed to live and should not be luxuries that we can't afford. Now, I'm going to leave that to other people to let you know about. Many of us older folks, I'm pushing 81, we're brought up in the mountains, and we do the R&R, retire and return to West Virginia. I did. Joe, you were put into office to take care of us. We didn't come here to suffer. We came back to live comfortably in our homes and receive decent care. There are over 300,000 senior citizens, and we deserve it. We pay taxes and we vote. Joe, do what you were elected to do. We're tired of the capital B. We put you in office, and we will work hard to make sure that you don't get to put the screws to anyone anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Next, we'll have Kaylin Marie Barker, who comes from a family of generational poverty. Kaylin Marie.
Thank you to the Poor People's Campaign for having me today. Like she said, my name is Kaylin Barker, and I'm a 9th generation West Virginian. Higher education has always been a very important part of my life, but as a lifelong low-wage worker, I was forced to take out predatory loans that have left me in a never-ending cycle of debt and anxiety. I left college with 2 fancy pieces of paper and over $100,000 in debt. In our state, only 44% of students graduate college and average nearly $31,000 in debt when they leave. Most West Virginians are not financially equipped to take on that debt, especially in an economy that does not favor education. Nationally, West Virginia ranks 47th in higher education, 50th in median income, and have one of the highest childhood poverty rates in the country. Investment in higher education like free community college would be invaluable to the people in West Virginia. We have 9 community colleges across the state that would empower workers to provide better for their families and surrounding communities. An investment in higher education could lift countless families out of poverty and allow them the skills to thrive in a 21st century economy. West Virginia has been locked into an economy that forces workers into low-wage service jobs with no hope for advancement. And after decades of this, our hope is dwindling. The cuts that Senator Manchin has negotiated into the Build Back Better agenda hurts our state. It will cost more not to pass a free community college plan than it would to pass it. Without this investment, more families will remain impoverished, using government safety net programs in order to just survive, and children will struggle to break the chains of generational poverty just like I have. West Virginia needs Senator Manchin to stand on the side of the people and vote to pass the entire Build Back Better agenda so that we can invest in the communities that have suffered for so long. We have begged our congressional delegation to help us for decades, but our cries have fallen on deaf ears time and time again. Senator Manchin is in a unique position to bring about desperately needed positive change for the state we all love so much. This is a pivotal moment in our history, and Manchin must get on board so that we can make progress and grow. It is time for an investment in our people. We have earned it for over a century of powering this nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylin. I want to take this moment to go ahead and open up the press for questions. In the event you have a question, feel free to raise your hand using the raise hand feature on Zoom, or you can put the question in the chat or use the Q&A function. All of those are open and available in the event people have questions for our panelists today.
Okay, we have a question coming from Alexi in Axos. I'll bring her on now.
Thank you, Yolanda.
No problem.
Alexi, what's your question?
Hi, thank you all so much for doing this. I'm Alexi McCammond with Axios, and I appreciate you walking through this in such personal terms because I know that can often be missing from the conversation. I guess the question is twofold. One, I'm curious if the folks from West Virginia, from the Poor People's Campaign and otherwise, did you all vote for Manchin in the past? Have you organized for him in the past and supported him, and now you're questioning his leadership, or have you never supported him? And then secondarily, if you could, talk to him directly, what would you say to Senator Manchin?
Caitlin, do you want to take this question first?
Yeah, I think some of the things that's missing from this conversation is that the West Virginia Democratic Party doesn't give us a viable second option in a primary. If somebody tries to primary Joe Manchin, they're immediately shut out. So it's either Joe Manchin or Patrick Morrisey, and Patrick Morrisey would be an even bigger devastation to the state of West Virginia. But I personally have never supported Joe Manchin just because in the time that I've been of voting age, this has been a continuous problem with him, the obstructionism and cutting and cutting and cutting and talking about entitlement. So for me, no, I've never supported Manchin and will not and won't ever consider supporting him in the future.
Thank you, Caitlin. Attorney Freisen?
Well, many of us have supported Senator Manchin in the past in his running, going back as far as Secretary of State and Governor. There is a lot of us in West Virginia that took for granted that he would be more conducive to helping poor people because of his family legacy. Many of us knew A. James Manchin so very well, and we knew that he was a person who stood particularly for people of African American descent. Back in the 1940s, A. James Manchin introduced in Congress bills for public accommodations for people of color. And so I believe that Senator Manchin has been riding on the coattails of his late uncle. But many of us have been disappointed with his so-called moderation stance. But I believe over the past few years, it has really come to a head. And so now those of us who have supported him in the past, and those of us who know him personally, are saying to Senator Manchin, what you are doing here is wrong. It's to the detriment of our most people in West Virginia who need it the most. And he's doing it in the name of bipartisanship, and it just doesn't work, because what he does, he dilutes the legislation in the name of bipartisanship, and then he's not able to get one Republican to assist him. And so what he has been doing is hurting the bills, and then not get any bipartisan support. To my mind, at this point, it is a shell game. And very importantly, none of this will make sense. None of this will make sense unless Manchin and Shelley Moore Capital are willing to deal with the filibuster. Because without dealing with the filibuster, none of these bills will be passed. So in answer to your question is that, yes, we are extremely disappointed. And the reason that people such as myself, that we're standing up so strongly, is because that we have backed him in the past, and his political career has been made on our backs. And we believe that he owes it to us to do the right thing.
Thank you, Attorney Friesen. The final answer will come from Jean.
Yes, I voted for Manchin. And as Kaylin said, basically he was the lesser of the two evils. Manchin is easy to talk to. Manchin encourages people to contact him. He wants to meet with you privately to solve your problem. He does not want to meet with you otherwise. I have called and I've left messages and I said, you know my voice by now, you know who this is. We have been very active. We have been at his office. Manchin has millions. His family has millions. He's been instrumental in harming the health of people through his coal mines. There is a place in Eastern Panhandle, Rockwool, and one of the people from that area should be here Sunday. Rockwool. I first saw on social media, people were in his office, and this was 2-3 years ago. So I started following that. Rockwool is in the Eastern Panhandle, which is considered probably the most expensive area of West Virginia. People, I know someone who moved from Charleston because of what was going on there with the chemicals to that area. She's just a little bit older than I am, but this is what she's facing now. Manchin supported that because it was expected to use 90 or something tons, 90 tons a day for the production. What does that say about people? It's an awful situation that many people don't recognize that's going on right now. The wind is blowing, it's going to affect us. The water, it's going to affect us. But it's in fact affecting the people who live right there in that area. This is awful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
No, I will not support him again, but I damn sure, will be out there to see to it that he doesn't go any further.
Thank you, Jean. I believe we have a question from the Tennessee Holler.
Okay, Justin, go ahead.
I'm sorry I signed on a little late, but I wanted to ask, we saw Bernie write an op-ed in the local paper, and obviously Poor People's Campaign has done a lot of work in West Virginia. Do you feel like Joe Biden could be doing more in West Virginia to go there and put the pressure on Manchin?
We have a response from Kaylin.
Yeah, I definitely think that Joe Biden could be doing a lot more for the people of West Virginia. Joe Biden, it's been radio silence to the people of West Virginia, but he's talking to Manchin day in, day out, giving concessions, giving him this, giving him that in the spirit of bipartisanship. But the problem is that Joe Manchin never gets even his colleague and best friend, Senator Capito, on board with anything that he does in the spirit of bipartisanship. So I think Biden could be doing a lot more to convince the people of West Virginia to stand up and fight back against this. But I just think that Manchin is a scapegoat for the Democratic Party, so that when something fails, they can say, well, it was Manchin's fault. So I feel like there's a kind of it's a two-sided coin, and neither side of it is particularly good for the people in West Virginia.
Thank you, Kaylin. We'll also have a response from our national co-chair, Reverend Theo Harris.
Thank you so much. We in the Poor People's Campaign have been calling on President Biden and Vice President Harris and all people of goodwill, but we've been calling on President Biden to indeed go to West Virginia, to go to Arizona, to go to Georgia and all places across the country where people's voting rights are under attack. Healthcare is inadequate. Haven't seen a wage raise in a long time, and talk to the people, hear what is really going on, and then go back to the well of Congress and push and push and push for a bold and broad investment. We've been saying in the Poor People's Campaign, in fact, that the 3.5 trillion of the Build Back Better plan doesn't go far enough. It's a good first step, and we're supportive of it for being a good first step. We indeed need to be investing in all the things that are going to lift people up. And we really believe that all of our lawmakers have a responsibility to be listening to the people. The fact that the vast majority of people in West Virginia, the vast majority of people across the country are supportive of the kinds of programs. The child tax credit, for instance, has overwhelming support in West Virginia and in states across the country, across party lines, across political lines, across all the lines that divide us. And yet we have senators compromising on the very things that people are saying are desperately needed. And so, we intend to keep on putting pressure on Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema and Senator Schumer, and keep on putting pressure and calling people to their better selves, to actually serve the needs of the people, and indeed calling on the White House to use the power that is there, to make sure that we actually do move forward together.
Thank you, Reverend Liz. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and let that be our final question. In the event you have any follow-up, feel free to reach out to me at lauren@kairoscenter.org. I also have that placed in the chat. The last note that I want to make is that at 4 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, October 24th, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, will be hosting a mass moral revival and rally at the West Virginia Capitol, North Circle Stage, 1900 Kanawha Boulevard in Charleston. The co-chairs will be there along with other faith leaders in order to further pressure Senator Manchin and Campito to ensure that they are advocating for their constituents. Again, thank you all for being there today, and we hope to see you on Sunday as well.
Great, Lauren. Thank you, everyone. And we also have now Reverend Matthew Watts, who has joined us, and perhaps we can invite Reverend Watts to also close us out since he's here. Reverend Watts.
Yes, this is Reverend Matthew Watts.
Yes, thank you for joining us. I know you had some trouble joining us. We're just wrapping up our press conference on this.
Yes,
I invite you to say a few words as we close.
Yes, again, we're excited with the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign to invite and have Dr. William Barber and Dr. Liz Theo-Harris and the National Poor People's Campaign to come to Charleston, West Virginia to help us host this mass moral revival and rally on the Capitol grounds of West Virginia State Capitol. We just believe this is a defining moment for our nation, and we certainly believe that it is a defining moment for the great state of West Virginia. Just as during the Revolutionary War, West Virginia was a central location, the gateway between the North and the South. And some of the most bitter battles that were fought during the Civil War were fought on the soils. That's what's now the state of West Virginia. And West Virginia, being the only state that was birthed during the Civil War, has played a pivotal role in history. And one of the roles that West Virginia has played, as West Virginia has always protected the right to vote of its citizens, even the ex-slaves. The West Virginia does not participate in the strong voter suppression that was practiced in the Deep South. And so it's fitting that the state of West Virginia, having elected one of his native sons, Senator Joe Manchin III, to the United States Senate, will be at the pivotal, on the front line of the fight for voters' rights in 2021. And that's why, as a close friend of Joe Manchin III for over 25 years, that I have to break my silence and speak to the need for him
to really use all the means at his disposal to include basically lifting the filibuster to pass a robust voters' rights bill. It's so desperately necessary. And lastly, I would say this. Anyone that knows anything about the state of West Virginia knows that we are one of the poorest states in the union. We're one of the oldest states in the union in terms of the age of our population. We're one of the states with the lowest life expectancy. We're one of the states with the lowest educational attainment of its people. We got major, major challenges because of the economic exploitation that's happened in our state for many, many years by the coal barons and those who extracted the wealth out of our soil. And so we need the Build Back Better bill that President Biden has sent to the Congress. We desperately need this bill, and we in the state of West Virginia would benefit it more than, or as much as any state in the union. And Senator Manchin is well aware of that. And as I shared a few days ago, my own personal experience when I was a child growing up in the southern West Virginia coal fields, and my mother had this great fear of the dentist. And so we never went to the dentist until I was 17 years of age. And when I went, I had 18 of my 28 teeth had cavities in them. Because the federal government had a program called the Aids to Families with Dependent Children, the dentist was able to accept that card, and he filled 18 of my teeth. And now 48 years later, I still have 28 of my teeth in my mouth, only because of the government invested in that program at that time. Now, many of them are capped now, and they got root canals in them, but they're my original teeth that were saved by a federally funded government program back in 1971. And so we have to invest in the people in this state, invest in the people in the nation. That's why we are strongly encouraging Senator Manchin to not allow himself to be pressured by those who would suggest that poor people, low-wealth people are not worth investing in. And every penny of the $3.5 trillion, the original budget for the Build Back Better bill, is desperately needed. And we will certainly ask Senator Manchin to recognize and acknowledge that the low-wealth people, low-income people all over the nation need this investment into the lives of the children themselves, the elderly, the sick, and everything that bill encompasses. And so we're hoping for strong turnout on this coming Sunday, October the 24th, on the Capitol grounds of the beautiful, majestic Washington State Capitol. And the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign has been gracious enough to allow the Charleston Black Minister Alliance and the Tuesday Morning Group to host a pre-rally of Stop the Madness youth rally before the Poor People's rally at 4 o'clock. So we ask you to come be there with us and show support for our youth as we fuse them together with this movement for economic justice and equity and fairness through the Build Back Better bill. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate. I certainly appreciate this. Encourage all the press to come out and support, cover this, so the people, not only the state of West Virginia, but all of the United States of America, will know that there is a coalition of different races and genders and ethnicities and all walks of life that are appealing to our Senator Joe Manchin III and to his colleague, Shelley Moore Capito, to support the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill. Thank you.
So this is Reverend Liz. I just want to really show some appreciation for Reverend Watts, for your invitation, for your leadership, and for that reminder that the government indeed can invest in the people, and when the government does, with the abundant resources that this nation has, that redounds to the benefit of really everybody. So again, thanks everybody for joining us at this press conference. We do hope that people will pay attention to the events, the rallies on Sunday and in the coming week, as we continue to work. It's always an honor to be here in solidarity with the people, especially of West Virginia.